That's one thing. As for the slavery issue, you know, Islam is the only religion of its age that I know of that has an emancipatory discourse. It actually does. وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا الْعَقَبَةُ فَكُّ رَقَبَةٍ. What would make you know what the good way is? Freeing slaves is the good way. There is no such verse in the Bible, by the way, like this. Number one. Number two, you'll find in the zakat, one of the categories of zakat is وَفِي الرِّقَابِ, to free the slaves. Yes, it didn't abolish it. I agree with that. Islam didn't abolish slavery. But it put in place a civ system such that if you did so many sins of dhihar, if you took an oath by accident, for example, if you killed somebody by accident, وَمَنْ قَتَلَ مُؤْمِنًا خَطَأً فَتَحْرِيرُ رَقَبَةٍ. If you kill a Muslim or a mu'min by accident, then you have to free a slave. And many other things that would allow it. Now, in the American experience, in 1861 to 1865, there was a civil war. And most historians say one of the main reasons for that civil war was because of slavery. The Northeast wanted to abolish it with Abraham Lincoln, and the South wanted to keep it in place. But if you really consider how many people died in that war, it's more than any other war in American history, even the ones they did with other countries. Which shows you that if you try and abolish something like slavery all of a sudden, look at how many people die. Because if what you want to do is free slaves, and I will not disagree with you, that Islam sees that as a good thing. And there are some, like Al-Qarafi mentions, for example, in his book of Usul, that the Sharia wants to kind of get rid of it, or it's al-hurriya, tashkhafur al-hurriya. It moves towards hurriya, or freedom. It's true. But the way in which the Sharia does it is very clever. And I would propose the following arguments. It is conceivable in an Islamic state for there to be poverty. If there's an Islamic state, it is conceivable that there is poverty. But Islam also encourages people to give sadaqah. It puts the impetus on the people to abolish poverty in their own way. Poverty is not a good thing. Islam does not see poverty as a good thing for the recipient, for the person, for the end user. But it doesn't abolish poverty. It's very interesting. Islam does not abolish poverty. It has zakat in place, it has sadaqah. But it is conceivable that even after all zakat is paid, it is conceivable that you could still have people who are impoverished. And if it's not conceivable, then who would you be giving the zakat to in the first place, every year? So it's conceivable to have an Islamic state and governance, and there to be impoverished and disenfranchised personnel or individuals in that place. Even though Islam, from, say, a cosmological perspective, wants poverty to be alleviated. But it doesn't abolish poverty. Because the repercussions of trying to abolish poverty is to strip people away from certain goods of theirs and to give it to other people, which can create further resentments and problems and civil disunities which we have seen in history. For example, in the Soviet Union with the communist stuff. We have seen what that leads to, like a communist system. We have seen the American. So these two experiments have been done. Abolishing slavery has been done, and abolishing poverty has been tried to be done with communism. Both of them failed. Just in as much as Islam attempts to abolish poverty through sadaqah and the impetus of the people, it so does the same with slavery. Not through abolition, but through the impetus and the encouragement through emancipatory discourse of the people. And this is a more wise way of removing something which is socially undesirable for the end user. That's the Islamic stance. As for treating them nicely, then there is a clear hadith, actually many clear hadiths of the Prophet telling us to free them and or to treat them nicely. There's one hadith that says, إِخْوَانُكُمْ خَوَلَكُمْ, that your brothers, basically these are your brothers. that treat them nicely and feed them from what you eat and clothe them from what you wear, and so on. And the other one, hadith, it states that do not call them Sayyid. Sorry, do not call them Rabb. Do not let them call you Lord. And do not call them slave, but call them Fataya. Call them my boy, if you like, or my young one, or whatever, Fataya. Fataya literally means boy. Or Fatati. Fatati for the woman, yes? Don't call them Lord, because why? It could interfere, Allahu Alam, it could interfere with the idea of the ultimate slavery is to Allah. We believe لا طاعة لمخلوق في معصية الخالق. There is no obedience to the creation and the disobedience to the Creator. What is Islam? Is full submission and slavery to Allah. That level of slavery only belongs to Allah. And to reinforce this theological meaning, the Prophet told us, do not call them Lord, and don't call them, but call them my boy or my girl. So call them, yes, there can be a hierarchy in place, but do not call them with words you would call Allah, for example. Oh yeah? Okay. Yes, please. ND. There's a car that's blocking the way. ND. 570. 266. It's a Daihatsu. It's urgent. Okay, so you see, the ultimate, because what is slavery defined as? And this is something important, because we say Islam allows slavery, but we have to be careful here, because what is slavery defined as? In most dictionaries, it's defined as legally owning an individual who would then obey you completely or something like that. Really and truly, Islam allows a kind of indentured servitude, but the word slavery, especially in an English context and in a Western context, has connotations which Islam has nothing to do with. The most important of them is the racial implication, the transatlantic slave trade, the buying and selling of black people. This Islam has nothing to do with. In fact, there is a book that is called White Gold, and it's about a Moroccan king. His name is Moulay Ismail. He is one of the guys who has the most kids in history. He has, I think, 400 or something. And it's about, he took slaves from Europe, and they were whites. And this guy called Giles, I don't know his surname, whatever his name is, who wrote that book, White Gold, he was very upset about this. He's a right-wing conservative in England. He's very upset and he's talking about it. And they called him over and they tried to beg him to release the white slaves. And they brought him to the pleasure palaces. And they tried to tempt him with women, but this is the worst strategy with a man who's got 400 kids and so many white slaves. And apparently, according to the narrations, they brought women and he didn't even look. He had Ghadd al-Basar. I mean, to be honest with you, if he didn't, I would question his Islam. I would question his Islam. He's got all this. But the point is, this shows you that it wasn't a racial matter in Islam. I mean, with all due respect, I'm not saying this one or that one, but I'm saying, look at the amount of white slaves that were taken by the Muslims. So it's not a matter of the colonial justification of the black slaves and stuff, and they had a racial argument, which is foreign in the Islamic understanding. Because we say, la fadla, there is no virtue over a black man over a white man over a black man, clear. Which is why Islam is the most cosmopolitan and multiracial religion in the world. So when we say slavery, we have to remove it from all connotations which have to do with the racial transatlantic slave trade that was perpetuated in the West, and the racial justifications were given in that world. Really, the Islamic conception is far removed from such conception altogether.